Number. The exiled dragon prince saw the human woman's tears and set half the sky on fire. The transport ship shuddered as it approached Ashfall Station. Inside the cramped passenger hold, Taeyang sat alone, with heavy chains around his neck. The collar was not made of ordinary metal. It was forged from starlight iron, designed to suppress the ancient fire that lived in his blood. Every dragon of the royal family carried flame in their veins, but his had been locked away by order of the Empress herself. His mother had not even looked at him during the trial. She simply raised her hand and declared him exiled. His crime was refusing to marry Lady Hana of the Northern Reaches, a cold woman with calculating eyes who collected power like humans collected trinkets. Taeyang had dared to say no. In the Draconite Empire, princes did not say no. The ship docked with a metallic clang that echoed through the walls. Taeyang stood slowly, his movements careful. Even suppressed, his body was stronger than most creatures in the galaxy. He was 847 years old. Still young by dragon standards. But he had lived long enough to know cruelty when he saw it. The airlock hissed open. The smell hit him first, sharp and bitter. Ashfall Station smelled like burning metal and unwashed bodies pressed too close together. A guard shoved him forward, without ceremony. Taeyang stumbled into the main corridor and saw his new home for the first time. Humans. Thousands of them. They moved through the narrow passages like water, through cracks in stone. Their faces gray with exhaustion. They wore thin uniforms that did little against the cold that seeped through the station's failing environmental systems. Their eyes were hollow. Their movements mechanical. They had the look of people who had forgotten what hope felt like. Taeyang had seen humans before, of course. They served in the palace as cleaners and maintenance workers. But he had never really looked at them. Now, he had no choice. He was being led through their world. Past their cramped sleeping quarters where dozens shared spaces meant for 6. Past their dining hall where thin soup was ladled into metal bowls. Past their memorial wall. He stopped walking. The wall was covered in names. Thousands of names. Carved or written or scratched into the metal surface. Some had dates. Some had small tokens left beside them, faded flowers, or twisted bits of wire shaped into symbols. 3,247. A voice said beside him. That's how many we've lost in the last 5 years. Taeyang turned. A woman stood there, small and thin like most humans, with dark hair pulled back from her face. She wore the white coat of a medical worker, though it was stained and patched in several places. Her eyes were tired but direct. She looked at him without fear, which was unusual. Most beings could sense what he was, even with the collar. Mining accidents? He asked. That's what they call them. Her voice was flat. When the equipment fails because it hasn't been maintained. When the safety systems don't work because replacement parts cost money. When workers are forced into unstable tunnels because the quota must be met. She paused. I'm Ji Woo, medical technician. You're bleeding. Taeyang looked down. The chains had rubbed his skin raw during the transport. It was nothing. Barely worth noticing. But she was already pulling him toward a side corridor. The medical clinic was small and overcrowded. Every bed was full. A man with a crushed hand sat waiting. A woman coughed wetly into a cloth. A young boy slept fitfully, his skin too pale. Ji Woo gestured to an empty corner and pulled out a basic medical kit. This will sting, she said, and began cleaning his wounds. Her hands were gentle but efficient. Taeyang watched her work and felt something strange in his chest. Shame, perhaps. This human woman, this fragile creature whose entire life would pass in the blink of his eye, was showing him kindness. He, who came from a family that had ruled star systems for 10,000 years, had never bothered to learn if humans felt pain the same way he did. Why do you stay? He asked quietly. On this station. You could leave. Ji Woo's hands paused for just a moment. I send money home. My brother is sick. The medicine is expensive. She finished bandaging his wrists and stepped back. And where would I go? The Empire owns all the stations in this sector. Ashfall is harsh, but at least I know what to expect here. Axie. The Satyr. When? Before Taeyang could respond, the station's alarm blared. Not the regular shift change alarm, but the emergency signal. Jiwoo's face went white. She grabbed her kit and ran. Taeyang followed. The lower mining deck was chaos. A tunnel had collapsed. Dozens of workers were trapped behind tons of rock and twisted metal. The air was thick with dust and smoke. Screams echoed from behind the debris. Jiwoo pushed through the crowd of panicked workers and started barking orders. You. Bring light. You. Get the cutting tools. Someone find Hyunwoo. We need the heavy equipment. She turned to others. Start clearing the small debris. Carefully. Don't destabilize anything. Taeyang stepped forward, his muscles tensed. He could clear this debris in minutes. He could tear through that rock like paper. He reached for his power. That ancient fire that had been his birthright since the day he hatched. The collar flared with pain. White-hot agony shot through his neck and spine, dropping him to his knees. The suppression field activated fully. His vision went black at the edges. He heard Jiwoo shout something but couldn't make out the words. When his sight cleared, she was crouching beside him. Don't, she said firmly. Whatever you were trying to do, don't. That collar will kill you. People are dying. He managed, through gritted teeth. I know. Her voice cracked slightly. But we'll save who we can. We always do. For 6 hours, Taeyang watched humans work. They had no dragon strength. They had no advanced technology. The equipment they used was old and barely functional. But they worked. They coordinated. They supported each other. When one grew tired, another took their place. They shared water and encouragement. They refused to give up. Jiwoo was everywhere at once. When they finally broke through to the trapped workers, she climbed into spaces barely wide enough for her body to fit. She treated wounds with supplies that should have run out hours ago. She held the hand of a man who died despite everything she tried, and Taeyang saw tears streak through the dust on her face before she wiped them away and moved to the next patient. They saved 43 people. 11 died. The survivors were carried to the medical clinic on makeshift stretchers. The dead were taken to the morgue, where someone would carve their names into the memorial wall. Late into the night cycle, Taeyang found Jiwoo in the station's observation deck. It was a small room with a single window, looking out at the red giant star that Ashfall Station orbited. She sat on the floor, her back against the wall, staring at nothing. He sat down beside her. For a long time, neither spoke. Your brother, he finally said. What's his name? Jaemin. Jiwoo's voice was barely a whisper. He's 23. He wanted to be an artist, paint beautiful things, but he got sick, and the treatment costs. She trailed off. Tell me about Earth, Taeyang said. Your homeworld. She looked at him, surprised. Then, slowly, she began to talk. She told him about Seoul, the city where she grew up, about cherry blossoms in spring, about her mother's cooking and her father's terrible jokes, about Jaemin's first art show, small but full of hope. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, as if remembering these things reminded her that beauty still existed somewhere. Taeyang listened. And for the first time in his long life, he began to understand what the Empire had taken from these people. Not just their labor or their lives, but their dreams, their chance to paint beautiful things. Something shifted inside him. Something the collar could not suppress. It was not fire. It was rage. Cold and patient and growing stronger. He made no promises that night. He did not know yet what he could do. But as he watched Jiwoo fall asleep against the wall, exhausted beyond measure, Taeyang decided that things would change. Somehow, they would change, even if it cost him everything. The exiled dragon prince saw the human woman's tears and set half the sky on fire. 3 weeks passed. Taeyang learned to move through Ashfall Station like a shadow. The Draconite overseers ignored him. To them, he was already dead. A prince, stripped of power and purpose. They did not watch what a dead man did with his time, so Taeyang watched them instead. He saw how Overseer Daejung filed reports claiming the station's systems were running at optimal efficiency. He saw the same overseer selling replacement parts on the black market, while workers used equipment held together with wire and prayer. He saw safety inspections falsified, medical supplies diverted, and ration quotas reduced, while the overseers ate imported delicacies. He also watched the humans. They had created their own networks of survival. They shared food when someone's rations ran short. They taught each other skills in secret so that if one fell, another could take their place. They sang songs in the sleeping quarters. Quiet songs that spoke of green hills and open skies that most of them would never see again. Taeyang began to help in small ways. He could not use his strength, but he had been trained as an engineer in his youth. Dragons lived long enough to master many skills. He started fixing broken equipment when no one was looking. A water recycler that had failed for weeks suddenly worked again. A ventilation fan that had been silent began to spin. The humans noticed, but said nothing. They understood the value of secrets. Ji-woo found him one evening in a maintenance tunnel, elbow deep in the guts of a malfunctioning air processor. She did not ask what he was doing. She simply sat down and handed him a better tool than the one he was using. "Hyun-woo wants to meet you," she said. "Who?" "A friend. He fixes shuttles. He also asks questions the overseers don't like." She paused. "We have to be careful. But he thinks you might want answers too." That was how Taeyang met Hyun-woo. The mechanic was a lean man with clever hands and careful eyes. They met in the shuttle bay during the sleep shift. Surrounded by the hulking shapes of transport ships, Hyun-woo did not waste time with pleasantries. "The station is dying," he said bluntly. "The main support column has stress fractures running through 60% of its length. The docking clamps are failing. The reactor shielding has gaps. In 6 months, maybe less, something will give way. Thousands will die." "Daejung knows this?" Taeyang asked. "He knows. He's known for 2 years. But evacuating the station means stopping production. Stopping production means the quarterly profits fall. So he files false reports and hopes the collapse happens after he's transferred somewhere else." Hyun-woo's voice was bitter. "We've tried to get messages out. They're all blocked. The Empire doesn't care what happens to humans." Taeyang felt that cold rage grow colder. Proof. Real documentation that even the Empire can't ignore. Safety inspection files, engineering reports, anything that shows the truth. Hyun-woo looked at him directly. "You can go places we can't. You're Draconite. Even exiled. You have access to systems we don't." It was dangerous. If Taeyang was caught, the consequences would be severe. But he thought of the memorial wall. Of names still being added every week. Of Ji-woo working herself to exhaustion trying to save people who should never have been in danger in the first place. "I'll get your proof," he said. The next days were tense. Taeyang used his knowledge of Draconite systems to slice into station databases. He copied files onto data chips, small enough to hide. He photographed reports showing equipment failures ignored. He recorded conversations where Daejung laughed about human casualties being acceptable losses. During this time, he and Ji-woo grew closer. She started meeting him in the observation deck after her shifts. They would sit together, watching the red giant star burn in the darkness. She told him more about Earth, about rain and seasons, and the ocean. He told her about Pyraxis, his home world, where crystal spires reached into the clouds, and dragons danced through solar winds. "Do you miss it?" she asked one night. "Flying. I mean," Taeyang touched the collar around his neck. "Every moment. It's like missing a part of your own body. Dragons are meant to fly. Without it, I feel. He searched for the word. Incomplete. I'm sorry. Her voice was soft. I'm sorry you lost that. I made my choice. He looked at her. I would make it again. She smiled, small and sad. Then her communication device beeped. She looked at the screen, and the smile vanished. Her face went pale. Her hands started shaking. Jiwoo? She could not speak. She just handed him the device. Taeyang read the message. It was from the Imperial Health Administration. A denial of treatment authorization. Her brother Jaemin had requested advanced cellular therapy for his condition. The request was denied. Reason: non-essential medical intervention for non-citizen life form. Cost inefficiency rating below threshold. He has 3 weeks, Jiwoo whispered. Maybe 4. Without the treatment, his organs will fail. There must be something. There's nothing. Her voice cracked. The treatment costs more than I'll earn in 5 years. She stood abruptly. I need to go. I need to be alone. She left before Taeyang could stop her. He sat in the empty observation deck holding her communication device, reading the cold bureaucratic words that had just sentenced a young man to death. A young man whose only crime was being born human in an empire that did not value human life. Taeyang had seen injustice before. He had known intellectually that the empire treated other species poorly. But knowing something and feeling it were different. This was not statistics. This was Jiwoo, who showed kindness to everyone, who worked until she collapsed, who still found reasons to smile. This was her brother, who wanted to paint beautiful things. He found her an hour later. She was in the clinic's supply closet, sitting on the floor among boxes of bandages and medicine that would never be enough. She was crying, trying to do it quietly so the patients outside would not hear. Her shoulders shook with the effort of keeping silent. Taeyang had seen people cry before. It had never mattered to him. Tears were common. Grief was common. But watching Jiwoo cry, watching this strong woman break under the weight of loss she could not prevent, something inside him broke too. He knelt beside her. Jiwoo. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I should be stronger. You are the strongest person I have ever met. The words came out fierce. You save lives with broken equipment and no supplies. You carry hope for people who have every reason to give up. You showed kindness to an exiled prince who did nothing to earn it. You are not weak. The system that does this to you is weak. She sobbed once, hard, and then covered her face with her hands. Taeyang did not know what to do. Dragons did not comfort like humans did, but he reached out and put a hand on her shoulder, offering what warmth he could. That was when he felt it. A crack in the collar. The starlight iron had been designed to suppress his power completely. But the forging process was not perfect. Nothing was perfect. And the rage inside Taeyang, the cold patient fury that had been building for weeks, found that crack. A thin wisp of smoke curled from the collar's seam. The metal grew warm against his skin. Deep inside, beyond the suppression field's reach, his fire stirred. No more, Taeyang said quietly. No more of this. No more watching good people suffer because my family decided they don't matter. Jiwoo lowered her hands, staring at him. Taeyang, what? The station's alarms screamed to life. Not the emergency alarm. The evacuation alarm. Something had finally given way. Through the floor, they felt a deep, grinding vibration. Somewhere in the station's core, metal was tearing. Hyunwoo's voice came over the communication system, cracking with static. All personnel evacuate immediately. The main support column is failing. I repeat. Structural collapse imminent. People started running. The clinic erupted into chaos as medical staff tried to move patients. Jiwoo stood immediately, her grief shoved aside by training and necessity. But Taeyang caught her arm. How many evacuation shuttles? he asked. 12, maybe 15 if they use the cargo haulers. This station holds 50,000 people. Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed by horror. There were not enough ships. There had never been enough ships. The overseers would save themselves and their chosen staff. Everyone else would die. Another crack appeared in Taeyang's collar. The metal glowed faintly red. His eyes, which had been dull gray for weeks, flickered with gold. Get to the shuttle bay, he told Ji-woo. Help Hyun-woo organize the evacuation. I'll buy you time. How? Taeyang smiled, and for the first time since his exile, it was the smile of a dragon prince. You're about to find out what I really am. The collar shattered. Pieces of starlight iron fell to the floor, melting as they hit. The fire in Taeyang's blood roared to life, no longer suppressed, no longer contained. His body began to change, bones shifting, scales rippling across skin. Ji-woo stumbled back, eyes wide. But she was not afraid. She looked at him, at the beginning of his transformation, and she nodded once. Then, she ran to help save her people. Taeyang stood alone in the supply closet as his true form emerged. And deep in his chest, where dragon fire lived eternal, something ignited that was hotter than any star. Rage. Pure and righteous and terrible. The sky would burn tonight. Half of it, at least. And the Empire would finally understand what happened when you made a dragon watch a good woman cry. The exiled dragon prince saw the human woman's tears and set half the sky on fire. The transformation took seconds, but felt like eternity. Taeyang's human form melted away like morning frost. His bones lengthened and strengthened. Crimson scales, each one harder than starship armor, spread across his expanding body. Wings burst from his shoulders, magnificent and terrible. Spanning 30 meters tip to tip, his neck extended, powerful and serpentine. His face became a dragon's face, with eyes like molten gold and teeth that could tear through reinforced steel. The supply closet exploded outward as he grew too large for the space. Patients and staff screamed and scattered, but Taeyang was already moving, crashing through the clinic's walls into the main corridor. The ceiling was too low. He tore through it, climbing up through 3 decks, leaving a trail of twisted metal and emergency lighting. He reached the station's main hub, a vast open space where corridors connected like spokes on a wheel. Thousands of humans were running toward the shuttle bays, in panic. The floor beneath them shook with each new structural failure. Somewhere below, the support column was slowly tearing itself apart. A massive section of ceiling broke loose. It fell toward a crowd of people trapped near a jammed door. They would be crushed. Taeyang moved. Even at his full size, a dragon could be terrifyingly fast. He lunged, spreading his body like a shield. The debris hit his scaled back with impacts that would have destroyed a building. He felt bones crack but held position. The humans below him stood frozen, staring up at the dragon who had just saved their lives. Run! His voice was a roar that shook the walls. Get to the shuttles. Now. They ran. He held the debris until they were clear, then threw it aside with a surge of muscle. More people were streaming through the hub. More sections were failing. Taeyang could see the pattern now. The station was collapsing from the center outward. The main support column was the spine of Ashfall Station. Without it, everything would crumble. He spread his wings and flew through the corridors, using claws and tail to hold up sections that were starting to fall. His fire breath, suppressed for so long, came roaring back. He used it not to destroy but to weld. Superheated flame melted metal and fused broken support beams back together. It would not hold forever, but it might hold long enough. In the shuttle bay, chaos reigned. Hyun-woo stood on top of a cargo container, shouting orders. Ji-woo was helping injured people into ships. But there was a problem. The main bay doors were sealed shut. The control systems had failed. The shuttles could not launch. Overseer Daejung stood near a private escape craft, surrounded by armed guards. He was screaming into a communication device. "Override the lockdown. I don't care about the workers. Open my launch corridor now." Hyunwoo jumped down from the container and ran to the main control panel. His fingers flew across the interface. The systems completely locked. Someone triggered it remotely. Who would? Jiwoo stopped. Her eyes went to Daejung. He did. He locked everyone in, so he could escape without competition for space. Understanding rippled through the crowd. Thousands of people, trapped. Daejung had sealed them in to die. The overseer saw their looks and backed toward his ship. His guards raised their weapons nervously. That was when Taeyang arrived. He tore through the bay's upper entrance in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. His massive form dropped to the deck with an impact that dented the floor. The fully transformed dragon stood in the middle of the shuttle bay, and everyone went silent. Daejung's face went pale. You broke the collar. That's a capital offense." Taeyang's laugh was like grinding stones. "You're worried about that? Now?" He took a step forward. The guards aimed their weapons, but none dared fire. Taeyang ignored them. His eyes were locked on the overseer. "You sealed these people in. You condemned them to die so you could save yourself. They're just humans." Daejung's voice rose in panic. "They're replaceable. I'm an imperial overseer. My life has value." "No." Taeyang's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire bay. "It doesn't." He moved faster than the guards could track. One swipe of his tail sent them flying harmlessly into a pile of cargo netting. He plucked Daejung up in his claws, lifting the screaming overseer into the air. It would be so easy to end him, to burn him to ash, to show the Empire what happened to those who valued profit over life. But Jiwoo's voice cut through his rage. "Taeyang, we need him. He has the override codes for the bay doors." Taeyang stopped. He looked at Daejung, dangling in his grip. The overseer had wet himself in terror. How small he seemed now. How pathetic. This creature had held power over thousands, and he had used it for nothing but greed. "The codes," Taeyang growled. "Now. I don't." Taeyang's claws tightened slightly. "I can feel your heartbeat. I can hear every lie. The station is collapsing. Those people die. You die. Give Hyunwoo the codes." Daejung broke. He sobbed out a string of numbers and commands. Hyunwoo entered them frantically. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, with a grinding roar, the massive bay doors began to open. Stars appeared beyond them. Open space. Freedom. "Load the shuttles," Hyunwoo shouted. "Prioritize the injured and young. Move." The evacuation began in earnest. Humans poured into ships designed to hold 20, but now cramming in 50, 60, however many could fit. Taeyang dropped Daejung into a cargo container and sealed it. Let the overseer survive, but never forget what it felt like to be powerless and afraid. That was when the main support column finally gave way completely. The station lurched sideways. Gravity systems failed. People started floating, screaming, grabbing for handholds. Shuttles that were not yet secured began tumbling. The collapse was accelerating. Taeyang spread his wings. "Hyunwoo, how many ships are loaded?" 42. "There are still people in the lower decks. Get these ships launched. I'll hold the station together." "That's impossible." "Launch them." The loaded shuttles began firing their engines, carefully maneuvering through the bay doors. Taeyang flew back into the station's interior. The corridors were breaking apart around him. He found the main support column, or what was left of it. A massive pillar of metal that had once been 30 meters wide was now twisted and shredded. Held together by failing joints and prayer, Taeyang wrapped his body around it. He gripped with claws and tail. He spread his wings to brace against the surrounding structure. Then he held. Just held. His muscles screamed. His bones ground together. The weight of an entire station tried to tear itself apart in his grip, but he did not let go. Below him, people were still running, still escaping. He could hear their footsteps, their voices, their pounding hearts. Each one was a life. Each one mattered. Jiwoo had taught him that. These were not statistics or resources. They were people with names and dreams, and brothers who wanted to paint beautiful things. More shuttles launched. The station shook harder. Taeyang roared, channeling his fire through his entire body. The heat was enormous. The metal he gripped began to glow red, then white. He was welding himself to the station, using his own body as a living support beam. Jiwoo's voice crackled through a communication speaker. Taeyang! The last shuttle is loading! You need to let go! Not yet. He could still hear people, still sense life signs in the lower decks. The station's core is going to explode. The reactor shielding is failing. I know. He could feel it. The heat building. The radiation levels spiking. If the reactor went critical, everything within 1,000 kilometers would be vaporized. How many left? 300 in the medical bay. The patients who can't be moved. Of course, Jiwoo would never leave her patients. Taeyang made a decision. He released the support column and dove deeper into the dying station. The medical bay was a nightmare. Equipment was falling. Beds were tumbling. But Jiwoo was there with a dozen other medical staff, strapping patients to floating stretchers, creating chains of people holding onto each other. This way. Taeyang smashed through walls, creating a direct path to the shuttle bay. He used his body as a shield, his wings as a roof. Debris bounced off his scales. Electrical fires washed over him harmlessly. Dragons were born in stars. What was a little station fire compared to that? They reached the bay. The last shuttle was waiting, its engines hot. Hyun-woo was at the controls. Come on. The medical staff pushed patients aboard. Jiwoo did a final count, making sure no one was left behind. Then she turned to Taeyang. Let's go. The shuttle is full. There's no room for me. Then we'll make room. We're not leaving you. An explosion rocked the station. The reactor was going critical. Taeyang could see the light building in the station's core, bright and deadly. 30 seconds. Maybe less. He looked at Jiwoo, smiled with his dragon face. Tell my mother I died doing something that mattered. No. Jiwoo grabbed onto his claw. You don't get to do this. You don't get to save us and then die. Someone has to slow the explosion. Someone has to give the shuttles time to get clear. He gently pulled his claw from her grip. I was dead anyway. This way. My death means something. Hyun-woo grabbed Jiwoo and pulled her into the shuttle. She fought him, screaming Taeyang's name. The shuttle doors closed. The engines roared. It launched. Taeyang watched it go, watched all 47 shuttles racing away from the dying station. Then he turned and flew toward the reactor core. The explosion was building. A sphere of pure energy, seconds from release. He had one chance. Dragons could absorb enormous amounts of heat. Their bodies were designed for it. Maybe, if he wrapped himself around the reactor at the moment of detonation, he could absorb enough energy to weaken the blast. Maybe the shuttles would survive. Taeyang reached the core. The reactor was a sun about to be born. He spread his wings around it, wrapped his body tight, and pulled it close. The explosion came. White light, infinite heat. The reactor's death throes channeled directly into Taeyang's body. He screamed, but his scream was lost in the roar of annihilation. Every cell in his body burned. His scales blackened. His wings tore. But he held on, held tight, and drank the fire like his ancestors had drunk the flames of creation itself. HFY Station died. It exploded in a cascade of light and debris, but the explosion was weaker than it should have been. Dampened, Absorbed, the shuttles, already racing away at full speed, survived the blast wave, and tumbling through the debris field, burning like a falling star, came Taeyang. Unconscious. Barely alive. His wings broken. His body wrapped around a lump of twisted reactor core that he still had not released. The sky filled with fire. Debris from the station ignited in the corona of the red giant star. Flames spread across half the visible horizon. A sea of light that would be seen from 3 star systems away. A beacon. A funeral pyre. A declaration. In the lead shuttle, Jiwoo pressed her hands against the window, tears streaming down her face. Behind the shuttle, the sky burned, and in the wreckage, a dragon's heart beat on. The exiled dragon prince saw the human woman's tears and set half the sky on fire. The refugee fleet limped through space. 47 shuttles, held together with emergency patches and desperate hope. They were headed for Sanctuary Point, a neutral station on the border between Draconite and human territory. It was 3 days away at their damaged ship's best speed. 3 days of recycled air, rationed water, and the constant fear that the Empire would catch them before they reached safety. In Shuttle 7, Jiwoo had not slept in 2 days. She moved between ships through hazardous spacewalk tubes, treating the injured, the sick, the traumatized. There were children crying for parents who had not made it. Old people whose bodies were failing from the stress. Workers with radiation. Burns from the reactor blast. She worked until her hands shook and her vision blurred, but her mind was in the debris field. With Taeyang, they had scanned the wreckage before jumping to faster-than-light travel. No life signs detected. Everyone said he was gone. Hyunwoo had put a gentle hand on her shoulder and told her she needed to accept it. Heroes died. That was what heroes did. Jiwoo refused to believe it. Dragons were nearly impossible to kill. The ancient texts said so. She clung to that hope like a drowning woman clung to driftwood. On the 3rd day, they reached Sanctuary Point. The station's docking authority was overwhelmed. 50,000 refugees arriving at once, with no warning. But the station master, a gruff Centaurian named Cora, made it work. She emptied cargo bays and turned them into temporary housing. She opened the medical facilities. She sent emergency requests across the communication networks for supplies and aid. Word spread fast. The story of Ashfall Station was too big to contain. Survivors talked. They told of the Dragon Prince, who broke his chains, who held a dying station, together with his bare claws, who absorbed a reactor explosion and bought them time to escape. The story traveled through human colonies like wildfire. Within hours, every human in 5-star systems knew the name Taeyang. In the Draconite Empire, the reaction was different. The Imperial Court convened in emergency session. Holographic representatives from all 7-star systems argued in the Grand Hall. Some called for Taeyang to be declared an outlaw, hunted down and executed. Others saw opportunity. A dragon who sided with humans could be useful, could be controlled, could be turned back to proper thinking. Empress Sua sat on her throne and said nothing. She listened to the arguments with a face like carved stone. Only her eyes moved, flickering with calculations that no one else could follow. When the session ended, she sent a private message through secret channels, an offer of asylum, a pardon, a chance to return to the family. All Taeyang had to do was renounce humanity and come home. The message never reached him. Because 2 days after the refugees arrived at Sanctuary Point, a small, unmarked ship docked quietly at Bay 43. 3 humans in salvage gear carried something large wrapped in thermal blankets onto a medical gurney. They moved quickly, avoiding attention, and brought their cargo to the refugee medical center. Jiwoo was treating a child's broken arm when someone called her name. She turned, saw the gurney, saw what was on it. The bandages she was holding fell from her hands. Taeyang lay unconscious, still in his dragon form but badly damaged. His scales were blackened and cracked. One wing was shredded beyond recognition. The other was twisted at an unnatural angle. Burns covered most of his body. But his chest rose and fell. Slowly. Barely. But breathing. "We found him in the debris," one of the salvage workers said, 3 systems away from ashfall. "He must have drifted in the blast." "Ma'am, he's alive, but barely. We don't know how to treat a dragon." Jiwoo's mind went blank for a moment. Then her training kicked in. "Get me every medical scanner we have. Contact the station's xenobiology department. I need references on draconite physiology. And someone find Hyun-woo. Tell him we need a clean room with temperature control." The next hours were a blur. Jiwoo had never treated a dragon before. No human had, as far as she knew. Dragon biology was a closely guarded secret of the Empire, but she had learned a long time ago that all living things shared basic principles. Stop the bleeding. Stabilize the patient. Treat the worst injuries first. Taeyang's body was trying to heal itself, but the damage was too severe. His natural regeneration kept starting and stopping, using energy he did not have. Jiwoo made a guess. Dragons were fire creatures. They drew power from heat. She had the medical bay's temperature increased to levels that made humans sweat and gasp. Taeyang's healing stabilized slightly. She treated his burns with synthetic skin grafts. She set broken bones with techniques designed for large animals. When his heart stopped twice, she shocked it back to beating with equipment meant for industrial use. She worked for 16 hours straight, while other doctors and medics assisted, following her lead. Finally, his vital signs stabilized. He was not healing. Not really. But he was not dying anymore either. Jiwoo collapsed into a chair next to his medical bed and fell asleep sitting up. She woke to find Hyun-woo covering her with a blanket. "You saved him," he said quietly. "We saved him," Jiwoo corrected. She looked at Taeyang's damaged form. "But I don't know if he'll ever recover fully. The wing damage alone. He'll live. That's what matters." Hyun-woo hesitated. "There are people who want to see you. Important people." The important person was Ambassador Eunji, the official representative of the human colonial government. She was a sharp woman in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had traveled to Sanctuary Point specifically to interview the survivors. Jiwoo met her in a borrowed office. Eunji did not waste time. "I need to know everything about what happened at Ashfall Station. The real story. Not the propaganda the Empire is spreading," so Jiwoo told her. She described the terrible conditions, Daejung's cruelty, the falsified reports, the memorial wall with 3,000 names. She told of Taeyang's transformation, how he held the station together, how he absorbed the reactor blast, how he had given them time to escape. "And you believe he did this genuinely?" Eunji asked. "Not as some elaborate draconite plot?" "I know he did," Jiwoo said firmly. "He had nothing to gain. He was exiled, powerless. He could have escaped with Daejung's private ship. Instead, he stayed. He saved us. Because it was right. Because he saw us as people, not resources." Eunji was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned forward. "Miss Jiwoo, what I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room. The human colonial government is preparing for war, not because we want it, but because it's coming, whether we're ready or not. The Empire has been growing more aggressive. Ashfall Station is not an isolated incident. There are dozens of stations like it across human space. What does this have to do with Taeyang?" "Everything." Eunji pulled up a holographic display. It showed news feeds from across human colonies. Protests. Demonstrations. Resistance cells organizing. Your Dragon Prince has become a symbol. Humans across the galaxy are calling him the Firekeeper. They're saying, if a Draconite prince can stand against the Empire, so can we. Revolutionary movements that were scattered and weak are now coordinating. Using his story as a rallying cry, Jiwoo felt something cold in her stomach. I know, but that's exactly why the symbol is so powerful. Yoonji's expression softened. I came here to ask you to make a statement. Tell your story publicly. Let the galaxy hear from someone who was there. Why me? Because you knew him before he became a symbol. Because your testimony will be believed. And because... Yoonji paused. Because there's a video recording that's been spreading through the networks. From Ashfall Station's security cameras. It shows Taeyang finding you in the medical supply closet. It shows you crying. It shows the moment his collar broke. Jiwoo's hands clenched. That moment had been private, personal. People have seen that? Millions. It's the most shared piece of media in human space right now. Yoonji pulled up the video. Fording Lime, end quote. Jiwoo watched herself crying, watched Taeyang kneel beside her, watched the collar begin to crack. The image froze on Taeyang's face. On the moment his eyes filled with rage, they're calling it the tear that broke an empire. Whether you like it or not, Jiwoo, you're part of this story now. Jiwoo made her statement 3 days later. She stood in front of cameras and reporters from 100 worlds. She told the truth. She did not exaggerate or dramatize. She simply described what happened. The conditions on Ashfall, Taeyang's choice to help, the evacuation, his sacrifice. When asked about the video, about the moment in the supply closet, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "He saw me cry because my brother was dying. He saw the Empire's cruelty in my tears. And he decided that no one else should have to cry like that." That's who Taeyang is. Not a symbol. Not a legend. Just someone who chose to care. The interview went viral. Within hours, it was playing on screens across the galaxy. In human territories, it inspired hope. In the Draconite Empire, it inspired fear. The idea that one of their own princes had turned against them, had chosen humans over his own people, shook the foundations of their society. Back in the medical bay, Taeyang stirred for the first time in days. His eyes opened slowly, glowing faint gold. Jiwoo was at his side immediately. "You're alive," she whispered. "You idiot. You incredible idiot. You almost died." Taeyang's voice was rough, barely a whisper. "The others? Everyone made it. All 50,000. You saved them." Tears ran down her face. "You saved us all." He tried to move his wing and gasped in pain. Looked at the shredded membrane, the bent bones. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "I can't fly anymore." "No," Jiwoo said softly. "Probably not. The damage is too severe. Even with dragon healing, your wings won't." Her voice caught. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thanks for watching." And describes her like, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Taeyang was silent for a long time. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. "I lost my throne, my family, my ability to fly, everything I was born with." He reached out with one claw and gently touched Jiwoo's hand. "But I found something worth more. I found purpose. I found you." Jiwoo laughed through her tears. "That's a terrible trade." "No," Taeyang said, his voice growing stronger. "It's the best trade I ever made." Outside the medical bay, the galaxy was changing. Resistance movements were uniting. The Empire was fracturing. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, war was gathering like a storm. But in that moment, in that small medical bay on a neutral station, two people from different worlds held hands and knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. Number, the exiled dragon prince, saw the human woman's tears and set half the sky on fire. 6 months passed like a storm. Taeyang recovered slowly in a rehabilitation facility on New Haven. the largest human colony world. His body healed, but his wings never did. The damage was permanent. He would never fly again. For a dragon, it was like losing a sense, like going blind or deaf. Part of him died with those wings, but another part of him came alive. He discovered he could lead in ways that did not require flight. His knowledge of Draconite military tactics proved invaluable. His understanding of imperial politics helped human negotiators predict the Empire's moves. Most importantly, his presence, his mere existence as a dragon who chose humanity, inspired people. They called themselves the Firekeeper Legion. What started as scattered resistance cells became an organized military force. Humans formed the core, but they were joined by other species who had suffered under Draconite rule. There were the Antari, insect people whose hive worlds had been strip-mined, the Kelesh, water dwellers whose oceans had been polluted. Even some young Draconites, inspired by Taeyang's example, defected and joined the cause. Taeyang became their commander, though he never wanted the title. He worked alongside human generals and strategists. He insisted on democratic decisions. He refused special treatment. When soldiers saw their commander, a wingless dragon, walking among them instead of flying above, it meant something. It said that they were all equal in this fight. Jiwoo commanded the medical corps. She had become famous after her interview, but she avoided the spotlight as much as possible. She preferred working in field hospitals, saving lives, one at a time. She and Taeyang saw each other when they could, stolen moments between battles and planning sessions. The best moment came 2 months into the war. Jiwoo received a message from Earth. Her brother Jae-min had been freed. When the Firekeeper Legion liberated the Gamma Sector labor camps, they found him among the prisoners. The Empire had sent him there when his medical request was denied. But he was alive. Thin and sick, but alive. He was receiving treatment now in a human hospital, and the doctors said he would recover. Jiwoo wept when she heard. These were different tears than the ones Taeyang had seen in that supply closet. These were tears of joy, relief, hope, realized. But the war was far from over. The Draconite Empire was vast and powerful. The Firekeeper Legion won small victories, liberating stations and colonies. They controlled 3 star systems now, but the Empire had hundreds. And the Imperial military was finally mobilizing in full force. The news came on a cold morning. A massive Draconite fleet, 300 warships strong, was approaching New Haven. It was the largest human colony, home to 40 million people. Evacuation was impossible. The fleet would arrive in 4 days. They had come to end the rebellion once and for all. The Firekeeper Legion had 57 ships. Most were converted civilian vessels. A few were captured Draconite frigates. Against 300 Imperial warships, they had no chance in a direct fight. Taeyang stood in the command center, studying the tactical display. Human commanders argued around him. Some wanted to evacuate what people they could and abandon New Haven. Others wanted to fight and die defending it. All the options were bad. There might be a way, Jiwoo said quietly. She had been studying the star charts. The Orin asteroid field. It's between here and the Empire's approach vector. If we could lure them through it. Hyun-woo, now the Legion's chief engineer, picked up the thought. The asteroids would break up their formation, make their numbers less relevant. We could set up ambush points, use hit-and-run tactics. They won't fall for it, a human general objected. Their commander isn't stupid. Why would they enter a tactical disadvantage? Taeyang smiled grimly. Because I'll be there. Alone. Challenging them. He looked around the room. The Empire wants me dead, more than anything. If I offer them a chance to kill me personally, they'll take it. That's suicide, Jiwoo said flatly. That's strategy. Taeyang met her eyes. I'll be in our fastest ship, leading them through the asteroids. You'll have teams positioned throughout the field. When the Imperial ships are scattered, you strike. The argument lasted for hours. But in the end, they had no better plan. The only adjustment Jiwoo managed to force was that she would pilot the ship. You're the commander. You need to be coordinating the battle, not flying solo. And before you argue, remember you can't actually fly anymore. You need a pilot. Tae-yang wanted to refuse. The thought of putting Jiwoo in danger made his blood cold. But she was right. He could not fly the ship himself. And if he was honest, there was no one he trusted more. 4 days later, the Imperial fleet arrived. It was a terrifying sight. 300 warships arranged in perfect formation, bristling with weapons. Their commander sent a message broadcast across all frequencies. This is General Quan of the Imperial Third Fleet. The human colony of New Haven is hereby claimed as Imperial territory. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. The voice was familiar. Tae-yang closed his eyes briefly. Of course. The Empire would send his older brother to kill him. It was a very Draconite thing to do. He opened a channel. Quan, this is Tae-yang. You want me? Come and get me. I'll be waiting in the Oran field. There was silence. Then Quan's voice came back, cold as space. Little brother. Mother gave you a chance to come home. You chose mayflies over your own blood. Now you'll die alone in a field of rocks. Maybe, Tae-yang said. Or maybe I'll teach you what I learned from those mayflies. He cut the channel, looked at Jiwoo in the pilot seat. She fired up the engines of their small, fast courier ship. Let's go make terrible decisions. 1. They flew toward the asteroid field with the entire Imperial fleet following. It was like being chased by an avalanche. The sheer size of the fleet blotted out the stars. But Jiwoo flew with precision, darting between asteroids, using gravity wells to slingshot them forward. The Imperial ships followed, their formation breaking apart as they navigated the obstacles. Tae-yang coordinated from the co-pilot seat. Team 7. They're approaching your position. Wait for my mark. He watched the tactical display. 15 Imperial ships were passing through a narrow channel between 2 large asteroids. Mark. 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 The asteroids exploded. Not naturally. The Firekeeper Legion had packed them with explosives. The blast caught 3 Imperial ships, crippling them. Before the rest could react, Legion fighters emerged from hiding spots, striking fast and disappearing into the debris. Team 3, go now. Another ambush. More Imperial ships damaged. The fleet was trying to regroup, but the asteroids made coordination difficult. Their advantage in numbers meant nothing when they could only engage a few Legion ships at a time, but the Empire was adapting. Quan split his fleet into smaller groups, each one hunting through different sections of the asteroid field. The Legion teams started taking casualties. Their ships were smaller, weaker. They could not afford to trade losses with the Empire. Jiwoo and Tae-yang led the most dangerous groups of ships deeper into the field. They had to. They needed to keep the Imperial fleet scattered, keep them chasing. But it was exhausting. Jiwoo had been flying for 6 hours straight. Sweat dripped down her face. Her hands were cramping on the controls. Contact, she said tersely. 3 ships, coming fast. Tae-yang looked. His heart sank. They were not ordinary ships. They were Dragon-class fighters, small and incredibly fast, designed for Draconite pilots, and leading them was a ship he recognized, his brother's personal fighter. Jiwoo, we need to run. Now. Already on it. She pushed the engines to maximum, diving between asteroids at speeds that made the ship's frame groan. But the Dragon fighters were faster. They were gaining. A weapon blast sizzled past their ship, close enough that the shields flared. Another blast, closer. Quan's voice came over their communication system. You can't run forever, Tae-yang. Face me like a dragon. I'm not a dragon anymore, Tae-yang replied. I'm something better. He triggered a pre-planted explosive on an asteroid they had just passed. The blast wave caught Quan's wingmen, sending them spinning. But Quan himself dodged. Too fast. Too skilled. He fired again. This time the shot hit, tearing through their ship's left engine. Alarms screamed. Ji-Woo fought the controls as they spun out. "I've got no maneuvering," Ji-Woo shouted. "We're sitting ducks." Taeyang made a decision. "Get to the escape pod." "What?" "Get to the pod. Launch yourself toward that cluster of asteroids. Our people will find you." He was already pulling himself toward the back of the ship. "I'm going outside." "No. I'm going outside. You can't fly." "I don't need to fly." He pulled on an emergency spacesuit. "I just need to hold on. I just need to hold on." Before Ji-Woo could stop him, Taeyang opened the airlock. He climbed onto the ship's hull as it tumbled through space. Quan's fighter was approaching for the kill shot. Taeyang reached for his transformation. It hurt worse than before, changing in vacuum with no atmosphere to cushion the process. His dragon form erupted across the ship's surface, claws digging into the hull for grip. Quan saw him and laughed. "Look at you, clinging to a human ship like a parasite. You've fallen so far. I've risen higher than you'll ever reach." Quan dove in for an attack run. Lightning crackled around his fighter, his own elemental power. Taeyang could not dodge, could not fly to meet the attack. He could only brace and wait. The lightning blast hit him full force, arcing through his body. Pain beyond description. But he held on. "You abandoned your birthright!" Quan roared, circling for another pass. "You threw away everything for these creatures. They live for a moment and die. They mean nothing. They mean everything." Taeyang's voice carried across the communication channel. "They taught me what our family never could. That power without compassion is worthless. That life matters, every life, regardless of how long it lasts." Quan attacked again. More lightning. More pain. Taeyang's scales were scorched black. He was losing his grip. But then, something happened. Human fighters appeared, dozens of them, emerging from hiding spots in the asteroids. They swarmed Quan's position, forcing him back. A voice came over the channel. "Nobody touches our commander." They could not hurt Quan, not really. Dragon-class fighters were too strong. But they could distract him, could give Ji-Woo time to get to the escape pod, could give Taeyang time to do what he needed to do. He let go of the damaged ship and pushed off toward an asteroid. His body tumbled through space. He could not control his direction without wings, could not fly to safety. But he did not need to. He crashed into the asteroid's surface, claws digging deep, and held on. From this new position, he could see the full scope of the battle. The Imperial fleet was scattered throughout the asteroid field. The Legion had taken heavy casualties, but they were winning. The Empire's advantage in numbers was gone. They were fighting on human terms now. Quick strikes and clever tactics. They were losing. Quan saw it too. He called for retreat. The Imperial ships began withdrawing, leaving dozens of damaged vessels behind. The Great Fleet, so terrifying hours before, limped away in defeat. The battle was over. The Firekeeper Legion had won. New Haven was saved, but the cost had been high. 30 Legion ships destroyed, hundreds dead, and Taeyang floated in space, clinging to an asteroid. His body burned and broken. Again, they found him an hour later. A rescue ship with Ji-Woo at the controls. She flew right up to his asteroid and extended the airlock. Taeyang pulled himself inside and transformed back to his smaller form. He collapsed on the floor, too exhausted to move. Ji-Woo dropped beside him. "You idiot. You incredible, amazing, stupid idiot. Did we win? We won." She was crying again, but smiling too. "We actually won." The war continued for 3 more years. There were more battles, more sacrifices, more victories and defeats. But the Battle of New Haven was the turning point. It proved that the Firekeeper Legion could stand against the Empire. More systems joined them, more species. Even parts of the Draconite Empire itself began to fracture, with younger dragons questioning whether the old ways were worth preserving. Eventually, the Empire had no choice but to negotiate. The Sanctuary Accord was signed on neutral ground, with representatives from 12 star systems. It established equal rights for all species. It ended the practice of forced labor. It created councils where all voices would be heard, not just the Draconites. Taeyang and Jiwoo stood together during the signing. They had married a year earlier in a ceremony that honored both their cultures. It was a small wedding, just close friends and family. Jae-min, fully recovered, had painted a mural for the occasion. It showed a dragon and a human standing side by side beneath a sky full of stars. Now, 5 years after the war ended, they lived on New Earth, humanity's rebuilt capital. They had a home, with a garden, where children played. The children were orphans from the war, humans and other species, all adopted into their family. Taeyang taught them about honor and compassion. Jiwoo taught them about healing and kindness. On quiet evenings, they would sit in the garden and watch the sunset. Taeyang never regretted losing his wings. He could not soar through the sky anymore. But he had learned to walk among people who valued him, not for his power, but for his choices. One evening, Jiwoo leaned against him, watching the children play. A tear rolled down her cheek. "Why are you crying?" Taeyang asked gently. "I'm not sad," she said. "I'm just remembering. That night in the supply closet, when everything felt hopeless, when I thought my brother would die and nothing would ever change." She looked up at him. "I was so wrong. Everything changed. You changed me," Taeyang said softly. "Your tears showed me what mattered. They broke the chains I didn't even know I was wearing. We changed each other," she smiled, "and we changed the galaxy." Above them, the sky darkened. Stars appeared one by one, filling the heavens. Somewhere out there, freed worlds were lighting up, each one a point of hope. Taeyang had lost his throne, his wings, his birthright. But he had gained a family, a purpose, and a future worth fighting for. He had once been a prince who could fly through solar winds and command the fire of stars. Now he was a father, a teacher, a protector of those who could not protect themselves. It was a better life, a life that mattered. Jiwoo squeezed his hand. The children called for them to come play. And together, the dragon who could not fly and the human who changed the galaxy walked into their home, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. The sky had burned. The galaxy had changed. And from those ashes, something beautiful had grown.